عندك مبلغ من المال صغير أو كبير وقررت تخوض تجربة الاستثمار لتحقيق أرباح وتزيد فلوسك، وعم تسأل نفسك كيف ووين استثمر؟ هل استثمر في قطاع واحد أم أنوع استثماراتي لتفادي وضع المال كلياته في مجال واحد ممكن ينهار في أي وقت أخسر كل شيء؟ مثل ما صرتوا تعرفوا، أول $1,000,000 حققته كان عبر التداول في سوق الأسهم، لكن في طريقي لتحقيقه وقعت بالكثير من الأخطاء وأكبرهم خطأين. الأول هو مثل ما بيقولوا إنه وضعت كل البيض بسلة واحدة، ولما تحط أموالك كلياتها في مكان واحد لتستثمرهم أنت بتحط نفسك في مخاطر كبيرة، لأنه لو حدث أي شيء لا قدر الله ممكن يبدد أموالك جزئياً أو بالكامل. لذلك نحن دائما ننصح بالتخطيط الجيد في تنويع المحفظة الاستثمارية. وببدايتي ما كنت أنوع محافظي الاستثمارية، كنت أتداول في الأسهم يلي أشعر بارتياح اتجاهها دائما في نفس القطاع، وبهي الطريقة كنت أعرض نفسي لمخاطر الخسارة المالية الكبيرة. أما خطأي الثاني طبعا هو أني كنت أميل لاتباع الأكثرية، يعني لما بدأت التداول كنت أتجه على التويتر وأشوف شو الترند وشو اللي بيتداولوه الناس الثانيين وأحاول إني أتداول مثلهم وأقلدهم. وبهي الطريقة خسرت الكثير من المال، لأن للأسف كثار منا ما بنعرف بشو لازم نستثمر فيه إلا بعد ما يكون السهم وصل للحد الأعلى لقيمته السوقية. ومش كل شيء بنسمع عنه إنه ناجح بالفعل هو ناجح. نجاح كل استثمار بيعتمد على عوامل كثيرة ولازم نعرف شو هي هاي العوامل. بس الخبر الحلو إنه أغلبية الناس بيتعلموا من خسائرهم أكثر من ربحهم. خسارة يا حسنة؟ إيه خسارة، لأن الخسارة جزء لا يتجزأ من أي عمل استثماري، ولكن السر يا صديقي في معرفة الأسباب والتعلم منها. ولهيك في هاي الحلقة رح أخبركم أسرار ونصائح من خلاصة تجربتي الخاصة بتنويع المحافظ الاستثمارية. عندك مبلغ من المال صغير أو كبير وقررت تخوض تجربة الاستثمار لتحقيق أرباح وتزيد فلوسك، وعم تسأل نفسك كيف ووين استثمر؟ هل استثمر في قطاع واحد أم أنوع استثماراتي لتفادي وضع المال كلياته في مجال واحد ممكن ينهار في أي وقت أخسر كل شيء؟ في هاي الحلقة رح نسلط الضوء على نصائح ومعلومات في حال قررتوا الانضمام لعالم المستثمرين. الخطوة الأولى والأساسية لتحديد المجال اللي رح تستثمروا فيه هو الاختيار بين نوعين من الاستثمار: الاستثمار عالي المخاطر أو الاستثمار قليل المخاطر. رح نتعرف عليهم بطريقة مبسطة جدا. الاستثمار عالي المخاطر بيكون العائد فيه أعلى بكثير من متوسط عائدات السوق المالي، وفي حال لا قدر الله كان في خسارة رح تكون كبيرة كمان. الأمثلة للاستثمار المرتفع المخاطر كثيرة، نختصرها في نوعين من الأصول. النوع الأول من الاستثمارات عالية المخاطر هي الاستثمارات في الأصول الرقمية أو الفيرتشوال أسيتس وأنواعها المختلفة، مثل العملات الرقمية، الميتافيرس، NFT والديفاي ييلدز. فهي بتكون أرباحها عالية جدا لكن معدلات مخاطرتها كبيرة. النوع الثاني هو الاستثمار في الأسهم والسندات عالية الأرباح. شو هو السهم؟ السهم ببساطة هو أنك تصبح أحد المالكين بالشركة بغض النظر عن حصتك، وهون بيكون الربح والخسارة مرتبط بأداء الشركة وديناميكية العرض والطلب في السوق المالي. ومثال يلي بيخلي الأسهم عالية المخاطر هو يلي معرض للضخ والتفريغ اللي بنسميه بالإنجليزي البامب اند دمب، وخاصة في فئة البيني ستوكس أو الأسهم اللي قيمتها أقل من $5. أما السند فهو ورقة دين إما لشركة أو لصندوق سيادي لدولة ما، بحيث يحصل صاحب السند على عوائد سنوية. بس لازم نفرق بين السندات العالية المخاطر والسندات القليلة المخاطر. مثلا السيفنجز بونز أو سندات الادخار هي مثال عن السندات القليلة المخاطر. الاستثمار عالي المخاطر ممكن يكون الحل الأمثل للشخصيات اللي عندها قلب قوي في الاستثمار، بس أشخاص ثانيين بيفضلوا استثمار أقل مخاطر ويكون العائد فيها ما بين 5 ل 10% بس. اليوم اجى لعنا من شيكاغو خصيصا على استديوهات أول مليون أحد أهم المستثمرين في وول ستريت وشيكاغو، وصديق عزيز الدكتور عبدور ليشاركنا خبرته الهائلة في عالم الاستثمار وكيف ممكن نساعد الشباب اليوم.
عبدور النميري مستثمر في وول ستريت، نائب الرئيس التنفيذي ومدير الاستثمارات في شركة UMB لإدارة الثروات الخاصة. وعضو المجلس الاستشاري الأكاديمي لمبادرة MMI ومورنينغ ستار للاستثمار المستدام إلى جانب لجان استثمار أخرى في شيكاغو.
Hi, Dr. Abdur. Thank you for being here and thank you for accepting to join us today.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. So from being a scientist to a wrestler, you joined the investment world. What is the common thing of these three?
It's important to keep in mind as you build a career, you're really building skill sets.
Right.
And so you think about a career as a scientist, scientists typically do principally a few things. They innovate, but also they problem solve. And so you can weave that directly into the investment world. The investment world is really about innovation and problem solving. And then you have athletics, which really is about understanding from my experience where your blind spots are. What do you do extremely well, where your capabilities are, and where you may need sort of improvement around it.
Right.
And so once you pull all those together, you find that in most careers, if you're able to be innovative, you're able to problem solve, but also be able to understand where your blind spots are, you typically will have a successful career across the board. And you probably experience the same thing in your career as well as you evolve and actually take on different capabilities, et cetera. So I think in terms of your career trajectories offer you capability building to allow you to move the needle to other things you may want to do. And for me, I've been able to leverage those into a successful investment career.
So how did you decide to get into the investment world? Was it something that, like, you just woke up one day and you decided to become an investor? It was more like your passion? What was it exactly? And do you think that anybody can become an investor today, a successful one?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
Yes, I woke up one day and decided I wanted to do it. And yes, I think that most investors can be successful. But it comes back to the key things that you mentioned earlier around this. It doesn't mean, but you'll measure success very differently. All right, and you think in terms of investment success, typically is anchored to what is the goal of the investor. If the goal of the investor is to build a retirement nest egg, that can be achieved. Is it to buy a second home? That could be achieved with the right investment programs in place. And so I do think that investors can track their goals and what they're trying to achieve. And if they have the right sort of core skill sets in place. And some of that may be what I call traditional learning.
Right.
It may be traditional foundation building. You know, key blocks, what is an investment? Those key things, once those are codified and you get a really good sense of those, then I think most investors can achieve their goals in a very tangible way.
You make a lot of sense. And this is something that I usually advise people before you decide, before you ask the question, where do I have to invest? What kind of asset classes do I need to invest at? Ask yourself why you need to invest and what is your goal?
That's you know, when I think in terms of what investors are trying to do, it's really fairly a couple very simple things. And you can break it down to food, water, and shelter. You know, most investors are trying to secure themselves.
Pyramid of Maslow.
It's a pyramid. And so most are trying to secure a future for themselves or their families in some basic form. And so when you think in terms of what the goal may be, the goal may just be sustainable wealth creation. Okay, the goal could be, I want to save enough money for my kids to go to college. It can be very simple goals. Without those goals, it's hard to have the discipline, and it's hard to actually see performance in the right light. And so once you understand what the goal is, now it's my job as an investment professional to now structure what we call the investment portfolio to achieve the specific goal that a client's trying to achieve. Right. In a lot of cases, or an investor's trying to achieve. In my own life, I typically will have a goal. It could be an investment goal, but that goal is always connected to a tangible outcome, a very tangible outcome, because the tangible outcome allows me to see more tangibly what I'm trying to do. So I can touch it, I can feel it, I can understand exactly what it is. If it's too far on the horizon, you lose track of it. Correct. In most cases. And so I think in terms of short-term goals that compound over time into longer-term goals. It's sort of like thinking about you take bite sizes to get to the complete picture. And so if you take small goals and you append them together, eventually that terminal goal you're trying to achieve is more achievable. Correct. Than looking at a longer horizon.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So now you're talking about people who already know what they want to invest in, kind of thing. But what about the people that really don't know how to get into this field, how to get into investments, what would you advise, let's say, a normal person, a normal employee, to invest at? What do they have to look at before they even think about what is the right asset class to invest at?
That's a great point. Most investors come to investments with a very specific goal. And so
and the first one is buying a car.
It could be buying a car. It could be buying a car. It could be buying a car. It could be buying a home. It could be I want to go to college, or I want my children to go to college. And so it always has to start there. Okay. Once it starts there, that's when you start to weave into how I need to invest. And so if you think if I have a 20-year goal, that investment is very different than a short-term goal. If I'm looking to buy a house in 2 years, that investment looks very different if I'm looking to buy a house in 20 years. Because I have time. And as we know in investments, time is a very important metric that you want to think about.
So then you would probably think of a long-term investment.
Exactly. So
versus
a shorter-term investment. But also the tricky thing is that if I have a short-term investment, I have to almost be at that investment level to meet that, to make that happen. And I'll give you a quick example. If my short-term goal, okay, is to buy a home in 2 years, all right, my investments have to be safer, okay, than if I have a home in 20 years. And the reason is that markets always move up and down. And so I can't risk markets moving down significantly in that 2-year period or I'll miss the goal.
So give me the type of asset classes you would advise to anybody who would want to, let's say, invest in a home in 2 years from now.
So if you're looking at a home in 2 years.
And they have to look into a safe investment.
You look at a safe investment. So you have two things you have to toggle. Is the time that you need, but also the investment type that you can go into. All right. So if I have a short horizon, that means I need to protect the asset, which means I go into safer assets.
Like what?
Like bonds, okay, or cash. The problem with bonds or cash is that they typically don't yield a lot, all right?
Yeah.
And so if I'm trying to fund a short-term goal, I have to almost be 60%, 70% funded to that short-term goal to make it work, okay? And that's why most people save for longer periods of time for a home, because they're starting out at a lower base. They have to build up.
Right.
And so in that case, they can be in riskier assets like stocks, okay, where riskier assets will compound more over time to get you to that terminal point.
And that's something we're talking about in our episode.
Exactly. And so you think stocks will compound over time to get you to that, but you need time to get there because markets can move up and down.
That's actually one of the major problems of people, is that they don't want to wait. So you as an investor, you're coming with a lot of experience and rich experience all the way from Chicago to the UAE. How do you look at UAE from the investments perspective?
You know, UAE is fairly unique in a sense. It's been able to really reduce the friction around investments and capital investment in things like real estate and services. The friction is lower, which means investors can invest in a fairly direct and fluid way. And so that's allowed more capital to flow into the UAE more effectively. And so I think there are a lot of pockets that one can invest in the UAE, real estate being one, services, businesses, et cetera, can be areas as well, and also precious metals, gold, et cetera.
What type of businesses? Fintech, one of them?
Fintech is one. You know, we're seeing healthcare as well. We're seeing friction in the crypto space, but blockchain continues to be an area of good interest and good investments.
Wow, that's great. So talking about investments and talking about helping and serving people to enter the field, we have a very special case with us, a beautiful, smart lady who wants to enter into the investment world. She's been doing really great in the real estate side, but she wants to learn more about different asset classes. Shall we help her today?
Yeah, we should.
Yeah? Okay, let's look into her.
Awesome.
رجعنا ومعانا سكينة في الاستوديو، فخلينا نتعرف على مين هي سكينة. Hi Sukaina.
Hi Hasna.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me today.
So Sukaina, you've been doing so great in the real estate world. You've advised a lot of people want to kind of real estate to look at, to invest at. However, You have been quite interested lately about different asset classes, and this is why you're here, right?
100%.
Tell us more about what you're looking for.
All right. So basically, as a real estate advisor, I usually have a lot of meetings with people where I'm the one who's answering their questions about where to invest their money, what kind of properties is the best for them to put their money in. And now it's my turn to be asking you these questions.
Yes. Now it's your turn.
Yes,
and that's why we're here.
Yeah. So basically, where I can invest my money, what's the best areas or the best fields where I can put money and get a good return.
As you think about investing just broadly around it, so you think about I have $100,000 in cash sitting in an account somewhere. I have a home. Okay, I have current income that's coming in as well. And so you have really three pockets that you can pull from. Okay, what would you say your short-term and long-term goals are?
The short term is, first of all, safety. So
An emergency fund. You would want to have an emergency fund.
Exactly. So having like a world now with a lot of options of investments are like out there. Some of them are tangible, some of them are not.
Right.
So first of all is that, like as Hasna mentioned, so the urgency in knowing that where I put my money is safe. It's not like I will wake up the next day and it will be like, I lost it. I know that taking the risk is the major factor in investment. Right. But however, I want the best option where the risk factor is minimal. And then on the long term is my return of investment. So how much I would be doing, let's say tomorrow, and how much I would be doing 10 years from now. I'm
going to unpack that just a little bit.
Please.
Okay, because you think in terms of what your return goal is.
Yes.
Okay, which is different than what your goal is. Now unpack that mainly because your goal should be something tangible. Okay, because it allows me to back into how we should deploy your capital. And so if the goal is I want to buy a second home in 2 years, I can understand exactly how much money we need to get to that level. Or I want X amount of retirement in 20 years. So I can actually set the investment program so we can hit that terminal piece. So when we back into that, what would you say you'd like to save towards in 2 years, 5 years, 20 years, etc.?
All right, so basically...
This is pretty much personal because our goals are different at the end of the day. Some people, they don't even necessarily have a goal, right? And 2 years from now, they don't need to buy anything, right?
And what we find is that the goal becomes something we can track towards.
A drive, yes.
Okay.
So that becomes your kind of motivation.
Exactly.
It's the drive,
you set the goal, and then again, what we know is that a goal sort of sits out here, and I can't control the goal.
Exactly.
I can control the process.
True.
So you think about the investment as the process that I can control.
Right.
I can control how much I save. I can control how much I put in fixed income. I control how much I put in stocks. And each one of those has a return profile associated with it.
That is completely different than the others.
Completely different. Stocks typically have a higher risk profile.
Of course.
Fixed income, real estate, lower risk profile.
Yes.
Okay, and so if my goal in 2 years is to buy a home, in 2 years, I'm probably going to sit more of my cash in fixed income.
Right.
Because I need to protect, to your point, I want to protect my cash.
My cash.
Okay, in that period of time. So as you think about your goals, the first step is to say, okay, this is my goal. Now we built the investment program around that. That creates the discipline we talked about earlier.
Right.
The discipline about tracking to the goal. So if you were to say, I want a 5-year goal, what would that look like for you?
Like a 5-year goal from now would be basically having my second home.
Okay.
Which is here, like where I'm based now, because in Dubai it's also like very, from a real estate perspective, it's very challenging to find the right property to buy. So one of the things is to get a property in Dubai, like 5 years from now, to have my own home. So that's one of the goals that I have. The other one of the goals that I have is having my own project, my own running project. So in order to do that, I need an income from one of my investments in order to fund my project. So these are let's say, the main goals that I have as Sukaina personally.
Let me ask you a question,
Please.
Sukaina. How much do you think you can buy that second home? Knowing that you have 100K in your account and you're willing to contribute 10K per month.
All right.
So how much is the price of that second home?
So to be very, very realistic, like if we're talking like 3 years from now, it would be something like somewhere around $1 million, something around
$1 million.
like
so you're trying to go, I mean, to reach your 1 million in 3 years from now, right?
years.
Do the
Yeah.
math. You're excellent at
So
math.
if I'm doing the math, what I'm telling you as advising on this is that you need to get to 1 million. I'd like you to get to 1.3 million. The reason is that 300,000 allows you a buffer in a stress scenario. Okay, we never want to get to the goal exactly. We want to exceed the goal. That way, we always create that buffer. And so, if I'm sitting at 100 grand today, more than likely I'm being riskier assets. Okay, to really build that up. And for us, that would be you'd probably be in more equities or stocks. For the income component you talked about earlier, you'd probably have some real estate in your portfolio as well. That does kick off income as well. And so this would be what we call a growth with income type strategy, where you have the growth component that's getting you to that 1.1 million, 1.2 million, but also you have the income that's allowing for you for current income to support some of the goals that you're trying to achieve. But we would track it so that the income starts to come off in about year 3. Okay, so we want to build fast, okay, and to start distributing income in year 3 through 4 and 5, but we front loaded the part of it for the higher risk assets so we can get more return profile, and then think about when you need to pull off income. So there are 2 questions. One is around the goal, the duration that we're dealing with, but also when you need to generate certain parts of the portfolio.
You're touching a very important point, which is the one of the points that we're discussing in the episode, which is diversifying your own portfolio. There's a lot of things to talk about, especially when it comes to this conversation. For sure, we're going to have more to discuss altogether. شكرا كثير دكتور عبدور. Do you know what that means?
No.
Thank you so much for being with us today, and thank you for all of these contributions. شكرا كثير لك سكينة.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. في حلقتنا تكلمنا عن أهمية بناء المحفظة الاستثمارية. خذوا مني هالكم نصيحة بمليون حول هذا الموضوع. أول مهمة ببناء المحفظة الاستثمارية هي التنويع ثم التنويع، يعني ما تحطوا كل أموالكم بسلة واحدة عند الاستثمار. ثاني شيء هو العمر. بيقولوا إن العمر مجرد رقم، لكن بهاي الحالة بالذات هو أكثر من رقم. الوقت صديقكم. كل ما بدأتوا بكير بالاستثمار، أكيد مع التنويع بمحفظتكم الاستثمارية كل ما ارتفعت حظوظكم لبناء ثروة. ثالث شيء هو الإصرار والمثابرة يا أصدقائي. حتى الاستثمار بيتطلب الانضباط، يعني بنصح بالاستثمار المنتظم وعدم التوقف بعد فترة قصيرة، لأن هذا الأمر ما بيساعد في بناء الثروة. وآخر نصيحة، إعادة تقييم المحفظة بشكل متواصل كتير شيء ضروري. ممكن كتير تضطروا تستبدلوا بعض الأصول في المحفظة بأصول ثانية حسب البرفورمانس بتاعتها وأداء السوق. ولهيك بقول لكم أجلوا مشترياتكم الغير الضرورية وخصصوا أموالها اللي تستثمروها بكل صغيرة وكبيرة. استعملوا عائد هالاستثمارات لزيادة رأس مالكم الاستثماري، ولا تملوا من تكرار التجربة. وهي بتكون خلطتنا لأول مليون.